The Jedi Order. For 1,000 generations, the Jedi Knights were the guardians of peace and justice in the Old Republic. They were warrior monks, diplomats, and scholars wielding the mystical energy of the Force for the good of the galaxy, but their success bred a subtle and fatal arrogance. They became rigid, dogmatic, and blind to the darkness growing within their own ranks and in the heart of the Republic they served. They failed to see the Sith Lord orchestrating a galactic war from the shadows, a man who posed as their greatest political ally, Chancellor Palpatine. Their doom came not from a foreign enemy, but from within. Their chosen one, Anakin Skywalker, a Jedi they had trained but never truly trusted, fell to the dark side and became Darth Vader. At Palpatine's command, the clone army the Jedi had led for years turned their blasters on them in an act of galaxy wide betrayal known as Order 66. In a single night, the Jedi Order was all but exterminated, hunted down in temples and on battlefields by their own soldiers, led by their fallen brother. Their fate is a classical tragedy of hubris, an ancient noble institution so confident in its own light that it failed to see the shadow it was casting. V. He is a man without a name, a face, or a past. The man who became V was once an inmate at the Larkhill Resettlement Camp, a concentration camp run by the neo-fascist Norse Fire Party that seized control of Britain. He was a victim of horrific medical experimentation that, while granting him enhanced physical and mental abilities, destroyed his identity and left him physically scarred. He escaped by fire, reborn not as a man, but as an idea. Adopting the guise of Guy Fawkes, he became a living symbol of revolution, an eloquent, theatrical anarchist dedicated to dismantling the oppressive state that created him. V's tragedy is that to become this powerful symbol, he had to completely sacrifice his humanity. He could never know a normal life, love, or peace. His entire existence was a performance of vengeance and ideology. His fate was to die, but to ensure that the idea he embodied would live on through his protege, Evie Hammond. He orchestrated his own martyrdom, leaving a legacy of chaos and freedom built upon the ashes of a life he could never reclaim. He won his war against the state, but the man he once was remained a permanent casualty. The Avengers. Avengers Infinity War. They were Earth's mightiest heroes, a pantheon of super soldiers, gods, and technological geniuses who had, time and again, saved the world from threats deemed insurmountable. Their very existence was a promise. No matter the odds, they would win. Infinity War is the story of that promise being broken. The Mad Titan Thanos arrived not as a simple conqueror, but as a force of cosmic inevitability, seeking the 6 Infinity Stones to erase half of all life in the universe. The Avengers, fractured and scattered after their own internal conflicts, fought him on multiple fronts, across different worlds. They fought with valor, ingenuity, and desperation, and they lost. On Titan, they nearly wrested the Infinity Gauntlet from him, only to fail. In Wakanda, they made a final heroic stand, only to watch Thanos brush their strongest members aside. The true tragedy came with the snap of his fingers. One by one, their comrades, their friends, turned to dust before their eyes, the final silent testament to their utter and complete failure. Their fate was not death, but something worse. They were the survivors, left to wander a broken, silent universe haunted by the knowledge that they were not strong enough. Dr. Manhattan. John Osterman was a brilliant nuclear physicist. A laboratory accident shattered him into subatomic particles, only for his consciousness to painstakingly reassemble itself into something no longer human. Dr. Manhattan. He became a god walking among men, a being of pure energy who perceived all of time, past, present, and future simultaneously. This omniscience is the source of his profound cosmic tragedy. For Dr. Manhattan, there is no free will, no suspense, no surprise. He experiences his own life as a fixed, unchangeable script. He falls in love with a woman knowing the exact moment and reason their relationship will end. He watches historical events unfold, already aware of their outcome. This divine perspective stripped him of his humanity, making human concerns like love, fear, and hope seem like trivial mechanical processes. He grew increasingly detached, a blue-skinned ghost haunting a world he could no longer connect with. His fate is the ultimate loneliness, a prison not of walls, but of infinite knowledge. He is a god who lost his soul, adrift in a cosmos where every moment has already happened, leaving him with nothing but a cold, eternal present. Rorschach, in the morally ambiguous world of Watchmen, Walter Kovacs, known as Rorschach, was a figure of terrifying, absolute certainty. His worldview is as stark as the shifting ink blots on his mask. There is good and there is evil, with no gray in between. This uncompromising philosophy was born from a childhood of trauma and a career witnessing the deepest depravities of humanity. He became a vigilante who refused to bend, who saw crime not as a societal issue, but as a moral filth to be scoured away, violently. His tragedy is that of the absolutist in a world that runs on compromise. When the other heroes uncover a conspiracy to prevent nuclear war by faking an alien attack, a lie that will kill millions to save billions, Rorschach cannot accept it. For him, a peace built on a lie is no peace at all. In the end, he stands before the godlike Dr. Manhattan, demanding to be allowed to expose the truth. Knowing this would undo the fragile peace, Manhattan is left with one choice. Rorschach's final defiant scream, "Do it," is the sound of a man choosing annihilation over the violation of his principles. He dies for a truth the world did not want, a martyr to his own rigid, brutal code. Ellie, she was born into a world that had already ended, a child of the apocalypse who was, paradoxically, a symbol of its potential rebirth. Ellie's immunity to the cordyceps infection that had turned humanity into monsters made her the most important person alive. She was feisty, witty, and resilient, a beacon of light in a dark world. That light began to dim when she watched Joel, the only father she had ever known, be brutally murdered. This event ignited a fire within her, a singular, all-consuming need for revenge. Her journey in The Last of Us Part 2 is a descent into an abyss of violence. She hunts down Joel's killers one by one, and with each act of vengeance, a piece of her soul is chipped away. She sacrifices her relationship with her partner Dina, the stability of a peaceful life, and her very humanity in pursuit of her target, Abby. In their final brutal confrontation, she has Abby at her mercy, but a fleeting memory of Joel stops her. She lets Abby go. But this is no victory. Ellie returns to the farm she abandoned to find it empty. She has lost her friends, her love, and two of her fingers, leaving her unable to play the guitar, her last tangible connection to Joel. Her fate is to be utterly alone, a hollowed out shell who won nothing and lost everything. Omni-Man's victims. For 2 decades, Nolan Grayson, as the superhero Omni-Man, was Earth's savior. He was a symbol of hope, a protector in the vein of Superman, an alien from the planet Viltrum who had chosen to defend humanity. The entire world loved and trusted him. The tragedy of his victims, therefore, is not merely their physical annihilation, but the psychological shattering of this global trust. The truth was that Omni-Man was not a savior. He was an advance agent for a brutal, conquering empire. His true nature was revealed in a horrifying battle against his own son, Invincible. In an attempt to educate his son on Viltrumite supremacy, Omni-Man unleashed his full power on a civilian population. He held his son's head in place, forcing him to watch as he flew through a subway train, the force of his passage reducing every passenger to a gory red paste. The victims of that train, and the thousands of others he killed, died in the most traumatic way imaginable, murdered by their world's greatest hero. Their fate is a testament to the horror of absolute betrayal, a demonstration that the brightest light can hide the darkest intentions, turning a symbol of hope into an instrument of unimaginable slaughter. Sarah Lynn. Her life was a performance that began long before she could understand the script. As the child star of the saccharine 90s sitcom Horsin' Around, Sarah Lynn was robbed of a childhood. Her identity fused with the catchphrases and manufactured sweetness of her on-screen persona. She grew into a woman desperate to escape that shadow, chasing ever more extreme forms of celebrity hedonism, all while harboring the quiet, tragic dream of becoming an architect. Her desire for a normal life was a ghost that haunted her every decision. Her fate was sealed not by a stranger, but by the man who played her television father, BoJack Horseman. During a prolonged, self-destructive bender, she sought solace in the one place she felt a flicker of wonder: the Griffith Observatory Planetarium. There, surrounded by projected stars, she overdosed on heroin. BoJack, her enabler and final companion, waited 17 agonizing minutes before calling for help. Sarah Lynn's death is the final grim punchline to a life that was a joke she was never in on. A casualty of an industry that builds children into idols and then discards the broken adults they become. She died reaching for the stars, a victim of the one who was supposed to be her guardian. The Fellowship, if Frodo failed at Mount Doom. Imagine a world where every sacrifice was for nothing. The Fellowship of the Ring was Middle-earth's last desperate hope, a union of races, a pact of 9 companions against the encroaching shadow of Sauron. They endured the loss of Gandalf in Moria, the breaking of their company at Amon Hen, and the long, perilous journeys through enemy lands. Frodo Baggins, the small hobbit from the Shire, carried the fate of the world in a ring around his neck. His quest led him to the very precipice of victory, to the crack of doom. But in that final moment, the ring's power proved too great. In this tragic alternative, Frodo does not destroy it. He claims it for his own. Instantly, Sauron's eye would turn to him, his victory absolute. The Nazgul would descend, the ring would be reclaimed, and the Dark Lord's dominion would be cemented forever. The sacrifices of Boromir, the valor of Aragorn, the light of Galadriel, all extinguished. Gondor would fall, the Shire would burn, and the remaining heroes would be hunted, enslaved, or twisted into monstrous versions of themselves. This fate is perhaps the cruelest of all, to stand at the finish line, only to see hope itself consumed by the very evil it sought to destroy, an eternal darkness born from a single moment of weakness. The Survey Corps. To join the Survey Corps was to enlist in a suicide mission. Within the walls that protected humanity's last remnants from the monstrous man-eating titans, these soldiers were the only ones who dared to venture out. Their purpose was to reclaim the world, to understand the nature of their enemy, but in practice, their function was to die. For every sliver of knowledge gained, dozens of soldiers were devoured, their deaths often meaningless and horrifying. They rode out under the banner of the Wings of Freedom, a symbol of hope that, for most, became a tombstone. The existential dread of their fate was compounded by the truth they eventually uncovered. The world outside hated them. The Titans were their own transformed countrymen, and their entire struggle was a political conflict engineered by others. Their motto, "Dedicate your hearts," was not just a battle cry, it was a demand for the ultimate sacrifice. They gave their lives, their limbs, and their sanity, fighting monsters only to learn that the true monsters were human, and that their desperate fight for freedom was merely a chapter in someone else's war. Their tragedy is the slow, grinding erosion of hope, replaced by the grim duty to die for a truth that offered no salvation. John Kramer's Victims. The horror of the Saw series is not rooted in simple murder, but in the perversion of survival. John Kramer, the Jigsaw killer, did not see himself as a murderer. He was a philosopher of suffering, a man who, diagnosed with terminal cancer, believed that people did not appreciate their lives. His games were his thesis. His victims were not random. They were chosen for their perceived moral failings: addiction, infidelity, apathy. They were placed in elaborate mechanical traps and given a terrible choice: endure unimaginable self-mutilation to atone for their sins, or die. The tragedy of Jigsaw's victims extends beyond the physical torment. They are forced into a crucible that shatters their psyche. To survive, they often must betray others, abandon their own humanity, and commit acts that will haunt them forever should they escape. The escapees are not saved. They are broken, reborn into a world where they have proven to themselves the monstrous lengths they will go to live. Their fate is to carry the weight of Kramer's judgment, their bodies and souls scarred by the lesson that life's value is measured only by one's willingness to destroy a part of oneself to keep it. Eddard Stark. As the Lord of Winterfell, Eddard Stark was a man forged in the harsh, unforgiving North, a realm where honor was not a lofty ideal, but a shield against the encroaching darkness. He was a veteran of a bloody rebellion that placed his friend on the Iron Throne, yet he sought no glory, only a quiet life with his family. His tragedy began the moment he rode south to King's Landing. He entered a world of whispers, lies, and political maneuvering, armed only with a rigid, unbending moral code. This code, his greatest strength in the North, became his fatal flaw in the South. He discovered a terrible secret at the heart of the royal family, and in his attempt to navigate the crisis with decency, To protect children, to honor his dead king's wishes, to reveal the truth without needless bloodshed, he was outmaneuvered at every turn. Betrayed by those he trusted and condemned by a system he could not comprehend, he was promised a quiet exile. Instead, for the cruel amusement of a boy king, his head was struck from his shoulders before a jeering crowd. His fate is not merely a death, it is the brutal execution of virtue itself, proving that in a world of monsters, a good man's honor is a death sentence. Joel L. Miller. In the 20 years following the collapse of civilization, Joel Miller became a monument to loss. The brutal murder of his daughter Sarah on Outbreak Day hollowed him out, replacing a loving father with a hardened, ruthless survivor who did whatever it took to see the next sunrise. He was a smuggler, a killer, a man who had long since abandoned hope. That changed when he was tasked with escorting a teenage girl, Ellie, across the ruins of America. In her, he found a reason to live again, a surrogate daughter to protect. This love, however, became the catalyst for his doom. Upon learning that a cure for the pandemic required sacrificing Ellie's life, Joel made a choice. He slaughtered the Fireflies, the very doctors and soldiers who could have saved humanity, to save his one girl. 4 years later, this act found its consequence. The daughter of the surgeon Joel killed hunted him down, and with a golf club, she brutally beat him to death as Ellie was forced to watch. Joel's fate is a perfect, horrific circle of violence. His greatest act of love was also his most selfish sin, and he died not in a blaze of glory, but as a helpless man paying a debt written in blood. Lelouch v. Britannia. His was a life defined by a terrible, brilliant, and ultimately successful lie. As an exiled prince of the tyrannical Britannian Empire, Lelouch v. Britannia witnessed the brutal subjugation of Japan and vowed to destroy the world his father had built. Granted the supernatural power of gas, which allowed him to command absolute obedience, he created the masked persona of Zero, a revolutionary freedom fighter. He became a symbol of hope for the oppressed, but his path was paved with manipulation, sacrifice, and the blood of both enemies and allies. He orchestrated wars, betrayed those he loved, and committed atrocities, all in service of a secret, final plan. In the end, he conquered the entire world, becoming the single most powerful and hated tyrant in human history. This was his true goal. By focusing all the world's hatred onto himself, he created the conditions for his own demise. In a globally televised event, he arranged for his own assassination at the hands of his best friend Suzaku, disguised as the heroic Zero. Lelouch died reviled by the world, a monster in the eyes of history, his true intentions known only to a handful of people. His fate is the loneliest victory imaginable. He saved the world by ensuring it would forever despise him.